Well, joining us now on the program is Jeremy Rosenthal, trial attorney, to take a closer look at, Jeremy, what really was an election interference case, not a hush money trial. But I'm curious whether you think people will actually see it that way.
I don't know how people are going to view it. I mean, we're all sort of in this world where I think everybody's sort of made their mind up about everything, right? There is a little bit of irony here, right, that the panic in this case that the prosecution laid out in the beginning was that, look, the Trump campaign in October of 2016 was that they were going to lose a presidential election. And now that we've seen 8 years later, this is certainly a bad news cycle for their team. So it's kind of ironic that it's come full circle like this to set in probably what is a new round of panic for Mr. Trump and his team trying to get elected for president a second time.
Well, Donald Trump says he didn't do anything wrong. That suggests that the jury got it wrong, but the evidence appears to be compelling. What's the grounds for an appeal here?
There's not a lot. Appeals are a really hard business. There's a few grounds that I think they're going to focus on. One is going to be what we call the jury unanimity issue, which there's been a lot made of it in the last few days. And to kind of nerd out for just the 2 minutes, if you'll indulge me, it's really, really hard to, it's a difficult issue to explain. But take, for instance, a driving while intoxicated case or a DUI. The jury doesn't have to necessarily agree how you got drunk, and they don't have to agree what signs of intoxication you're exhibiting. Is your blood alcohol above the limit? Are you losing the normal use of your mental or physical faculties? The jury doesn't have to agree. They just have to agree that you're a drunk driver. In this case, what the judge said was, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you don't have to agree how Donald Trump was covering up a felony. You just have to agree that there was one. In other words, 6 of you can agree that this was covering up tax fraud, and 6 of you can agree that this was covering up election fraud. And so long as you get there, you can convict him. That's what we call a unanimity issue, and because juries do have to be unanimous under the Constitution, that can very well trigger a stronger appellate issue. But even then, I think it's based on some pretty well-settled law. I wouldn't expect an appeal here to have much legs.
So a few things will happen prior to any appeal. And I'm curious what you think about whether or not, once we get to the final judgment and once we get to the sentence, if it involves jail time, whether or not you think that Donald Trump would be remanded to jail. In other words, he would not be out while the appeal is being prepared. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on that?
I'd be fairly surprised if he went to jail. First, I read a report just the other day which suggested that for this type of offense in this jurisdiction, about 1 out of 10 people go to jail for this charge. Donald Trump is a 77-year-old man. He's got no criminal history. So you would think that he would be a high candidate for probation. Also, really, he's also the most secure person in the planet already, if you think about it, because he's surrounded 24/7 by government agents already, the Secret Service. So he's not going anywhere, and in many ways, he's kind of already trapped. I would anticipate that if he does see any type of incarceration, that it could be some kind of home confinement. Even then, even on July 11th, if he does get sentenced to jail, assuming it's a moderate or low sentence, he can file an appeal which will abate that sentence well off into probably 2025 and potentially 2026.
One thing the judge did warn about was violations of gag orders. If that keeps happening, might that change the picture vis-a-vis jail time?
It could. Think about it like this. So we had this gag order, and then we had Donald Trump, who kind of does his thing where he sort of kind of comes right up to the line, and maybe he crosses the line, and if he does, he doesn't do it really severely, or he comes sort of close to it. And Judge Marchand really found himself in a power struggle with this defendant, which is very, very rare. I mean, you've got a situation where Trump was, in many ways, almost daring the judge to put him in jail. If you put Donald Trump on probation, Judge Marchand knows he's just signing up for more of those fights, right? He's signing up for more of these, I'm going to violate probation, I'm going to violate, I'm going to test you. So maybe the easiest way to do that is just to give him a jail sentence. Then if he does that, Trump appeals it. If Trump wins the election, then maybe it's in the governor of New York's hands to whether or not he wants to pardon Trump at that point. But that's maybe how I see this playing out.
I'll give you a chance to nerd out a little bit more because what was interesting was the jury returned the verdict very quickly. It was just a day and a half, something like that. So that sort of shows you that they were pretty clear on this. So I'm curious from your standpoint what the prosecutors actually did to simplify this case and present it what seems to be so effectively.
This is what I would call a paper cut strategy. What they did was they put witness after witness after witness. There was 22 witnesses in this case, 21 of whom were not Michael Cohen. And most of those witnesses, it was really difficult for Trump to get a square punch on. You had the first third, if you will, of the trial was setting up the motive that the Trump campaign in 2016 was in disarray. We had the current affair tape. They were desperate. They thought that this Stormy Daniels case could be a death shot to their campaign. You had the middle part of their trial, which was all the money trails. And then it finished up with Michael Cohen. And so it's just the way that juries think, in my mind. I think that juries make up their mind fairly quickly in the entire process, and then they're like anybody else. If you've ever dealt with a Packers fan, then you know this already. It's difficult to talk sense to some people, right? But you get the jury sort of buying into their theory somewhat early, and then it's hard to change their mind. So by the time Michael Cohen takes a stand, this thing has probably long since been over. So that's something that I think the prosecution did a fairly effective job of. I think the jury's going to come back and tell us that they reviewed the charges a couple times, that it was probably 10-2 guilty, 9-3 guilty at the first straw vote, and that they just kind of kept going and were able to get whatever holdouts there were. Maybe it was 12-0, and they just said, well, we have to review this all because we can't come back with a 15-minute verdict. So those are the things I would expect to hear from this panel.
Jeremy, just very quickly, an independent judiciary is a pillar of democracy, and now we've got Trump casting doubts on the integrity of the U.S. legal system. Do you have any broader fears? Just quickly.
The institutions in this country are sacred. I'm a lawyer. I love what I do. I'm an advocate for my profession and for the legal system. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. I mean, and the fact we're talking about it is a good thing. Yeah. And hopefully people can see and trust their institutions in this country.
And we'll do it some more, Jeremy. Thank you so much.